Our guest today on Meinl Radio is Meinl Cymbals artist Shawn Crowder. Shawn joined our Meinl family in late 2021 and has been a real treat to work with since that time. Honestly, if I could bottle up his sense of calm and sell it, I would make a fortune. Talking to the guy is literally the antidote to anxiety. All of that sense of calm shows itself in his musicianship. Thoughtful, deliberate, composed, patient, purposeful. Those words describe Shawn as a person, but also very much describe his approach to his instrument and to the music he plays. If you're not familiar with him, as a Shawn Crowder 101 class, go to his YouTube channel and watch some of his videos there. You'll see what drew us to him, as he's a monster drummer and a very smart guy that has a lot to share. And like our other artists on here that I seem to always go on and on about in terms of how kind and sweet they are, Shawn ticks those boxes too, of course. Also, check out his band Sungazer, a project that he's involved with another monster musician and also a content creator, bassist Adam Neely. Now, Sungazer and content creation is by far not all that Shawn's involved with, but I mention them as two obvious points of reference for anyone that wants to know more of what he's about. Now, onto the podcast. I'd like to welcome everybody into Meinl Radio. Today, our guest is Shawn Crowder, coming at us from Colorado. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris.
Man, I'm just going to launch right into it. I want to ask, you're a man of what seems to be many projects, or at least that's the way it seems to me.
Yeah.
But which project or projects right now is taking up the bulk of your time?
Yeah, at the moment, my main project is a band called Sungazer, and that's a duo with myself and the bassist Adam Neely. So that takes up most of my time right now, but I also do YouTube and I play with other people and keep busy in various other ways.
Now, with I know it's a duo, Sungazer's a duo, but do you guys have any touring members?
Yes, for sure. It's definitely a lot more fun to play with multiple people. So we bring people on the road with us. We just got off a European tour. We had a keyboardist named Pierre Luigi Salami, a very good friend of ours. And in the States, we tour with a keyboardist named Christian Lee and a saxophonist named Jared Yee. We also have a rotating cast of other people, like Shib Saran is a great guitarist, and many others. But yeah, it's a duo at the core, but we definitely like to mix it up and keep a rotating cast of musicians playing live with us.
And how long have has Sungazer been an actual band?
Yeah, so the band originally started in 2014, although Adam and I go way back. We met probably 2007 or 8 at Berkeley, where we were both students, and we played in a bunch of bands together. We were roommates for a while, along with a guitarist named Elliot Klein in New York. And yeah, Sungazer was just our outlet to play the music that we wanted to play. And it took many, many years for that to gain any traction. But in the last few years, this definitely exploded in a very cool way. So we're fortunate to have lots of people around the world that want to come see our nerdy jazz fusion electronica music.
Is that how you explain it when someone says, like, if you're in a serious interview and they say, what kind of music do you play, or what genre would you classify Sungazer? Do you literally go that far?
Man, that's the hardest question in the world to answer, and it's the one that we get probably the most often. At the core of it, I think Sungazer is really a prog metal band disguised as video game music.
That's a perfect description. But see, what I wonder is that if you get these people that interview you, why are they asking you what kind of music you play? Like, in the first place, they're interviewing you because they're interested in your music. They already know. Maybe they're trying to let their listeners or their readers know. I don't know.
Right. It's like, I don't know, just listen to it.
Right, that's an oddball question. And it seems like in the last couple of decades that giving your music a classification through a genre has become, not your music, just anyone, it's become more and more difficult to do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if it's always been like that or if there's an extra push that has to do with technology and just people are exposed and able to check out lots of different music now. I mean, for us, it's not an intentional thing to like try and blur the lines. It's just, it happens to be what comes out of us, and we like a lot of different kinds of music. So, we studied jazz, but we grew up listening to Rage Against the Machine and, all this hard rock stuff, and also have, deep respect for pop songwriters. And it just all kind of coalesces into whatever it is that Sungazer is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is perfect. You're talking about stuff that I wanted to bring up and ask you about. So for you, what was your first love musically?
Yeah. So I started playing drums in large part because my dad was a drummer as well. And so was my grandpa, by the way. Neither of them do it or did it professionally. They both still play a little bit, but it was just always around in the house. And so I guess maybe my dad was my first percussive inspiration. And then from there, I started playing in the school bands, doing kind of the normal route of jazz band and marching band, and playing xylophone and all of that. And I think the first drummer that really struck a chord with me was Carter Beauford of Dave
Okay.
Matthews Band.
That's what I wanted to know. So like the
Yes.
first drummer that you really felt passionate about. So
It was
would
like,
you call
who is this guy that's playing all of this really cool, intricate stuff in pop music on the radio? It blew my mind. And it was maybe the first drummer that I really noticed had like a distinctive voice that was like, oh, wow, I gotta get into that. I guess I do have to say before that, I was exposed to like Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa just from my dad. Those were the drummers that he knew to show me, and John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. So, I had a lot of influences like that. But yeah, Carter definitely was a big one. And then later on got into more the fusion guys. So like Dennis Chambers is a huge influence for me. Vinnie Caliuta, Virgil Donati, Mike Mangini. I mean, all of these sort of super drummers I find really inspiring. But, I also love the quote unquote groove guys, although I think that's an unfair term in some ways, because I think all the guys I mentioned have a great groove. But, I love Steve Gadd and Steve Jordan and the Steves,
Yeah, the Steves. Well, it's funny because what I was really wanting to ask you, this is like even more interesting. What I was wanting to ask you was, your first love musically, was it more in rock or jazz? But then you landed on Carter, which is this like right in the middle thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
from there, it seems you went on into more of a progressive realm.
Yes.
Because you'll find oftentimes that there's guys that start out as a rocker, but then they find their way into jazz, or vice versa. It can happen, but it seems
Right.
more often than not you find rock guys that ended up in jazz.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just on that point, I think that's exactly it is, and that's how I got into the fusion stuff. Is like literally fusion started as jazz rock. That's what it was called in the beginning. And I can remember vividly having this thought in high school of like, man, I would love to play music with the energy and the beats of rock music. I had a garage band with my friends and stuff. But I also loved the improvisational aspect of jazz. And so that's, when we loosely call Sungazer jazz, it's really the improvisational element that we're talking about there, because it doesn't sound like jazz. I suppose the harmony maybe has some jazz influence, but it's not, spang spang-a-lang trad jazz. So it's the improvisational element, but in an electronic context or in a progressive context.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Well, what I was also curious about, and I think I can still ask you this. So take your love for certain things that fall under the more traditional header of rock, and then take your love for things that fall under the more traditional header of jazz. What does learning one do for your sensibility in the other?
Oh, everything. Everything. That's huge to me. And it may be just part of my personality. Like, I really love variety. I noticed this recently with food too. When I'm eating, I have some kind of odd, quasi-obsessive quirks at times. And one of the things that I noticed is I really like a variety of things in a dish, and I like to mix them up and go from one to the next. Meaning I don't want to like finish all of my, whatever rice and then move on to the vegetables. And I like
Yeah.
how all the flavors interact. And it's a silly metaphor, but I think it's the exact same kind of thing with music. I love the interaction of the energy you get from playing metal and just, smashing those crash cymbals, and you get this intensity. But I also love the kinds of feelings that you can get by playing quiet and nuanced and more of like old school jazz type thing. I think, it was important for me to study many different things, including Afro-Cuban and Brazilian music. And, I spent many years touring with a singer from Tunisia and learning about that culture. And all of it influences the way that I play, and I can't possibly express every emotion in one style of music.
Right. No, of course not. Um, I love the food analogy. That's incredible. I've never heard it said that way, but you're absolutely right. And then I think if you take that and you think about, like, let's just look at the U.S. for instance. I mean, you mentioned Tunisia, and there's a lot of a melting pot going on there
For
musically.
sure.
But like, let's just think of the U.S., where maybe I'm going to assume the bulk of our listeners are right now. So New Orleans. I mean,
Yeah.
you got a food called gumbo, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, and there's so many little stylistic leanings that go into their music down there. It can be incredibly hard to pinpoint. It's been given names, but like, and it all goes together.
Yep. For sure. Yeah.
Interesting. So you left Colorado to attend college at Berkeley in Boston, from which you actually graduated, which is pretty incredible to me because, as a lot of people know, and maybe some of you out there don't, you don't necessarily have to graduate from Berkeley to end up
Right.
doing something in the music biz. I mean, it could be a launching pad for going out on tour or working in a studio. And yeah, you just meet people there and things happen. But you actually graduated, which is awesome.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome. What I'm curious about is, what did going there do for you?
Wow. A lot. It did a lot for me. And by the way, on the note of graduating, there was always kind of like a rumor or just this idea among the students that it was actually the ones that didn't graduate that ended up becoming successful because they would go on the road with all these huge people. But anyway, somehow I managed to slip through the cracks, I guess.
Yeah.
Berkeley,
Loser.
for me, sorry, what?
I said loser.
Yeah, right. Berkeley, I think the most valuable thing that I got from it are two things. One, and probably the biggest one, was the community. So the people that I met there, the people that I spent time with in Boston, but also the people that I, continue to play with to this day, that cannot be understated. So I think that was probably the most valuable part of the school, is being immersed in that environment 24/7 with people that were trying to do the same thing. People that loved music as much as I did and wanted to be as good at their instruments as I was aspiring to. And I continue to play with these people today. In fact, all of those musicians that I rattled off that play with Sungazer, every single one of them graduated from Berkeley. So
Wow.
it's funny, yeah. The other thing is the instruction. And I had the great fortune of studying with many great teachers there, above all with Mike Mangini, who most will know as the drummer for Dream Theater for the last 10 or 12 years. He is an incredible drummer, but an incredible teacher as well. And he has had a tremendous impact on the way that I approach learning things.
So with Mike, what did you get more facility from him? Was it more of kind of like help with your intuition of music? Did he approach things technically or conceptually? Like, what was he? How did he really shine as far as the way he connected with you?
Well, he approached teaching and practicing scientifically, meaning he would look at how does this human body work? How do we develop muscles? How does our memory work? All of this is necessary to develop facility on the instrument, which you need in order to express the ideas. So whereas a lot of teachers would focus on, let's say, the more artistic side of things, which is great. I mean, that's important to talk about as well. There's also the cold hard fact that it doesn't matter how great the ideas you have are if you can't get your body to do them. So what I really connected with Mike about was I didn't need ideas. I didn't need somebody to tell me what to play, which is what a lot of the more traditional teachers were teaching. Not all of them, but what I got from Mike was, given the things that I already know that I want to play, how do I get there? What do I have to practice? How often do I have to practice it? And for how long? And Mike has some really, really ingenious systems for training the body, so to speak, to wire up the body to be able to do these things. And it's quite incredible to watch in action, especially firsthand. You're like, wow, I learned how to do that thing really fast, and it wouldn't have worked unless I had an exercise that was designed that way. So yeah, that's what I got from Mike. It was, like I said, a scientific approach, and he would approach it experimentally, like we would do, with all the students. Okay, let's all try this one thing this week, and then let's try a different thing this week, and we'll compare, and then you can really observe what works and what doesn't.
Optimization was his forte.
For sure, yeah.
Now, just curious, you mentioned Dream Theater. Did you ever end up watching the reality TV show style documentary that they did, where they did the cattle call of drummers and, well, not cattle call. I mean, they had specific drummers they brought in. Did you watch that?
Of course, yeah, because I studied with Mike from about 2006 or 7 until 2010 when I graduated. Mike got the gig, I think, one semester after that. I think he only stayed just a few months and then got the audition, and then he was on the road with them. So I mean, that was really inspiring to watch how that went down. I mean, all of those drummers are great, obviously. I'm a huge fan of all of them, but it was really special to watch, like, oh, that's my teacher. Like, yeah, he got the gig. That was so fun.
Yeah, I bet that was. That's kind of why I asked. I mean, I knew he was your teacher. I think even like on your website, out of all the things you list about yourself, you put his name there, which I knew meant he held a special spot in your life.
For sure. And, it actually goes deeper than that, because I recently had the pleasure of co-writing a book with him. And you and I haven't talked about this because it's brand new and it's not out yet, but he asked me to help put his ideas together. So he basically provided the ideas and I kind of put it into book format, and we just sent it off to the printer this week. So it's coming soon. Yeah.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, can you provide any details about what it's about, what it's going to be called, that kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah. So the book is the third volume in Mike's Rhythm Knowledge series. So the first 2 volumes were released in 1997 and 1998. So this is the first book in like 20 years that he's put out. Now, the original 2 books had a huge influence on me because I first read them when I was, I believe, a senior in high school, maybe a junior. And I immediately just connected with the tone of it, the teaching style, all the things I mentioned before. I had seen him at a drum clinic, not knowing who he was at that time, saw the clinic, went, wow, okay, this is incredible. I need to find out more about this. And so, yeah, I got those books in the mail, and I remember reading them. I read straight through both volumes, which is like 200 pages or something, in a single sitting. I couldn't put it down. And, that really was a big factor in pushing me to go study with Mike at Berkeley. And so, I studied with him there, and then I was fortunate enough to have him ask me to work on this third book.
Wow, that's incredible. And when was the last time you had been in touch with him prior to him asking you to help out with this book?
Well, we've stayed in touch over the years. I mean, I've been to a handful of Dream Theater shows and seen that up close, and that's incredible and super inspiring. This guy's never make a mistake. I don't know how that's possible. But the book has actually been in the works for quite some time, and it's just because of both of our touring schedules and a number of other things, it just has taken this long to get out. But I'm really excited for it because what's contained in the book, the exercises there, have had a big influence on helping me play a lot of the things that I use in my own music. So with Sungazer, for example, a lot of it is coordination based, although there are a lot of applications, and the exercises are actually very simple on the surface, very easy to learn, but you can take them to just extreme places. So what it allowed me to do was learn how to wire up my limbs in different configurations, which sounds like maybe it's a little abstract and out there, but it's extremely applicable to anything. You need to be able to use your limbs, obviously, to play. So the more combinations and configurations you can kind of get get a hold of, then the more musical options you have. So it taught me to, for example, split my body into a left side and a right side, which I did on a song called Machina that we recorded together for a Meinl video. So, it's given me a lot more options, whereas most drummers just play hands against feet, right? You might repeat a samba pattern with your feet, doom, chicka, doom, chicka, doom, and then improvise with the hands. That's a very common kind of a thing. It's very rare, though, for a drummer to split up their limbs in a different way, left side versus right, or one of the diagonal pairs, like a right hand and a left foot. And the beauty and the benefit of that is that it just opens up more sound options. So if I've got my left hand available, I can play a second snare drum, which would allow me to play basically 2 drum beats simultaneously, which is what happens in that song Machina. So it's just more options, and it's really fun stuff to practice, and it works very quickly. So, yeah.
This just makes me wonder, just real quick, have you ever done any cursory reading to try and gain an understanding of the different hemispheres of the brain and the learning process?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm really fascinated by that stuff. I'm not qualified to talk about it on like a neurologist level, but it is absolutely fascinating. And one of the things that I discovered in practicing this stuff is there's a way that you can kind of split your senses so you can monitor different things at the same time, meaning like you're watching one pattern visually with your hands while listening to another, that kind of thing. And there's a way that you can play just outrageous things that you would think are not possible, but they actually are if you have the right method to learn. So, the science part of it is definitely fascinating to me.
It sounds like, and I'm just imagining this, so it sounds like as you learn, as you keep teaching yourself, you keep teaching your mind and body at the same time to be able to grow,
Yes.
technically speaking. It sounds like there's almost like this meditative point you'll be reaching when you're trying certain exercises and you're reaching for things. So my question is, because this happened to me, I think I've mentioned this before on this podcast to someone else, but I have this thing where when I'm playing music and I'm practicing something, where it's like this hump I have to get over, and that hump is called sleepiness. And I play, and then I get so tired, I almost start like sort of like my eyes will close and I'll sort of doze off, but I'm still doing like physically what it was I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then my eyes open back up, and then I feel really alert and awake. And I'm still playing. And so I was asking somebody one time, I was asking this therapist who guides meditation about that, and she told me, "Oh, that's totally natural. Like most people, when they meditate, when they learn to meditate, they have to learn to get past sleepiness. That's the first. That's like the first thing they have to get past." And so I wondered if you ever had to deal with that. Do you ever doze off?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think I would fall off the stool if I actually dozed off. But I think I've definitely noticed, and this has been for sure like researched a lot, is the effect of sleep on skill acquisition and memory. So if you practice something and then you sleep and come back to it the next day, something happens during the sleeping process that really solidifies it. So I wonder if that's related. It definitely could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's something to that. I've actually put my instrument down. Now, this is extreme. I don't do this often, but if I'm at a point where I'm just a little uninspired, I'll set, say, my guitar down for a week, and then or 5 days, which just seems that's a lot. I kind of get miserable, but I sort of think, well, this is for your own good, and then I come back and then wow, like huge doors have opened up for me.
Yeah. Okay, I've experienced that too. Sometimes you need time away from the instrument just to let things settle, or for your brain to make new connections. Or sometimes you can just be burned out, like on trying to get over some obstacle, and then getting a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of space can really just open up the doors when you come back.
Yeah, for sure. I got one more question, kind of related to education. It's extremely random. So I'll first give this total disclaimer. I'm really like I'm absolutely on my own timeline in life when it comes to watching films. I might wait 20 years to watch a movie after its release. No
Yeah.
good reason. That's just the way I work. I don't know why.
Sure.
So all that to say, finally, I recently watched the movie Whiplash.
Oh, nice.
And I found it to be fascinating, more on a psychological level than like, to me, it wasn't so much as much about drumming as it was just about like a guy who's abusive.
Yeah.
Have you? So you've seen the movie, correct?
I have, yeah. I think there are some elements of truth in that movie, but it's also exaggerated, obviously, and they had to. I understand why they did it, because they're making a movie, so it's got to be entertaining. So they infuse a lot more drama into it than, say, I experienced. Like, I never had a teacher like that guy. But yeah, there is a kernel of truth in there. I remember when I saw that movie, I think it came out in, I want to say 2015, and I was in Paris at the moment doing my very first European tour. And I actually lived in Paris for about 6 weeks on that tour. And I was learning French, and like I watched the movie. I think it was in English, but with French subtitles. So I was like learning a bunch of stuff, especially the bad words from this movie. So that's my memory of Whiplash.
What's the kernel of truth?
Well, the kernel of truth is sometimes you have a strict teacher. Sometimes you have to overcome obstacles. And I think maybe one of the things that resonated with me that's definitely a bit exaggerated, but is somewhat true nonetheless, is the students' dedication to the craft. Like, it's been a while since I saw the movie, but there was some like big climax, some like accident or something, and he was late to band practice or to the show, and he was bloody, and just all this drama, but he just persevered, and he's practicing so much that, he's got blisters, and but it was just the most important thing to him. And I can definitely relate to that, especially, I guess, during my 20s and my teens. That's how I kind of operated. It was like a singular focus. I mean, not quite to the extent as this guy, where he's neglecting every other aspect of his life. But yeah, I think that's something that I've found to be common among a lot of professional musicians, is that kind of obsessive drive to do this thing. I mean, it's very hard to become a musician if you just casually want to do it. You have to like need to be that in your bones. So that's the kernel of truth for me.
Have you found that there's been a sacrifice of other things you would deem important, but nonetheless it gets sacrificed on the altar of becoming a musician?
Yeah, yep. Particularly in that period that I mentioned, like my 20s, I think I would say until I started touring a lot, like on not just like regional tours, but like international tours, until I started doing that, which was like 2013 or 14. I had that singular focus, and I definitely like put everything else to the side, which in some sense is unhealthy. Like you can't do that for forever, but I feel like I did have a healthy balance with it, and I think it's okay for a period, especially that like young age when you're developing whatever it is. It doesn't have to be music, but you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life and that whole thing. But once I started doing the thing that I had been working towards all of my life, not all of my life, but since, I was 12 or 13 or whatever, was, um, I want to do this professionally. I want to get paid well to travel the world, play and record, and do the thing that I love. And once I was doing that, it was like a huge burden had been lifted off of my shoulders. And that's when I actually started taking a lot more time away from the instrument and intentionally focusing on all the other things in life that I had been neglecting. Like I mentioned, I was learning French. I mean, that was just something I did on a whim because I was touring in France a lot and working with this Tunisian singer who also spoke French. He was like, well, this is a thing that might be cool to do in life, like to learn another language. Let me give it a shot. So, yes, there definitely have been sacrifices, but I feel like I've been able to kind of balance those out over the long term.
That's totally fascinating. And while we're talking about, well, you mentioned being in France for 6 weeks, you've told me a little bit about this. You did a 3-year stint in Germany, not in the military, but just there for there for music.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners what was the purpose of that 3 years?
Yeah. So I lived in Berlin, Germany for, like you said, a bit more, 3.5 years. And at the time, I was touring again with this singer whose name is Amel Mathlouthi. She's from Tunisia, and we met in New York, but we started touring all over the place and, to lots of interesting places that I will probably never get the opportunity to tour in again with another group, places in North Africa or the Middle East, or I think we played on every continent with her. But she was kind of my main gig at the time. And let me think about this. So at the time I was living in New York, but we were mostly playing in Europe or in the Middle East, Arabic-speaking countries. And it just didn't make sense for me to keep paying my expensive rent in Brooklyn while I was never there. And I was kind of getting tired of New York. I had been there for 6 or 7 years, and it's an amazing city, but it's exhausting as well. So I was looking for a change. So in 2018, I moved to Berlin. I had been there previously on tour. It's actually very similar to New York in a lot of ways in terms of the culture and the presence of artists and people from lots of different nationalities. And it's a great city, and it's also way cheaper than New York. So I thought, let me do something different. I'm spending most of my time in Europe anyway for work, and I was able to work it out with the booking agents and stuff to get a visa and recommendation letters from German companies, and so it all kind of perfectly aligned in this opportunity. So yeah, that's what I was doing over there, and I just recently moved back to the States because part of it was pandemic related, but I started getting really busy with things over here. Sungazer started getting busy, so it makes sense for me to be based in the U.S. for the moment.
Well, speaking of the pandemic, what happened for you because of COVID and the resultant lack of touring in 2020?
Yeah. That was it was good and bad. Obviously, it was bad because for the same reasons it was bad for everybody else. I will say I recognize that I was fortunate relative to how a lot of people had to deal with it. So I had already been making YouTube videos and was starting to kind of move in that direction in terms of, building alternate streams of income, trying to become more independent and not being dependent on somebody else to call me for a tour. Because prior to that, that was my bread and butter, was going on the road. So yeah, we were in India with Sungazer, actually. India in March 2020. And yeah, we had a great tour over there. I've got a video about it on my YouTube channel about double drumming, because there were two drummers there, me and Josh Bailey, very good friend and great drummer. But yeah, we barely got out of the country, basically. I think we left maybe 2 days before they closed the border to all outgoing traffic. So we just barely scraped by. And then, of course, everything shut down. That was a major financial hit at first. But what was good about it is that it gave me an opportunity to really focus on the online side of things, getting more video stuff together, as well as, a Patreon and all that kind of thing. So that's been very valuable in this post-pandemic. I don't know if we're totally out of it, but in this period now where we're also able to tour, it's still nice to have these other independent, businesses running.
Yeah, well, you basically answered a question that I was going to ask you, and that's about, I think you're an excellent content creator. Whenever I watch your videos, I'm completely interested. You've got my attention. And
thank you.
Well, what I wondered was what was engaging in that world. What has engaging in that world done for you, your career specifically? But I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
Thomas Lang, I did an interview with him some years back, and he referred to these various income streams you're talking about as his river of nickels. And
Yeah.
So I guess that was your goal with it, was just to have different income streams?
Well, that was a part of it. I don't think it was necessarily driven first and foremost by, financial reasons. Because also, by the way, for anybody that wants to do it, you have to work at it a long time before you can actually earn anything substantial from making stuff online. But it was that and a combination of me wanting to share the things that I made videos about. At the time in particular, there was a real lack of people making the kind of videos that I wanted to see, meaning there's 1,000,001 YouTube drummers that make videos about like how 10 mistakes that beginners should never make. And they have like a big red X and a green check mark. And I have nothing against those guys or those videos, but the market is so oversaturated with videos like that, targeted towards beginner or intermediate drummers. And there wasn't really anything filling the more advanced stuff that I wanted to watch. And so that's how it started. It's funny now that as time goes on, I've found that I end up like talking about a lot of basic things anyway. I end up needing to break things down to their most fundamental levels just to make it understandable and clear, and even for myself. So that's how it started, and also watching my very good friend Adam Neely have a lot of success with his YouTube channel, and him telling me, "Man, you gotta get on this. There's a need. People are writing to me saying we need a drummer version of Adam Neely," or there was a demand, and I just tried to fill it.
That's totally interesting. Well, a question that I wanted to ask you that just thought of it. You had mentioned, and it was kind of a warning, or not a warning, like a little word to the wise. So if you're going to try and establish yourself as some content creator online, you got to go for a while until you actually see some serious fruits from your labor. Was there, what was the point where you actually knew, like, okay, this is an additional income stream? Like, what was it? Was it just a certain amount of subscribers or viewers, or like, was there a certain thing, a type of video that you started putting out that really amped things up? Like, what was it?
Yeah, well, there's definitely an art to making videos that will perform well. And by the way, I still actually don't make very much money on YouTube itself, partially because I don't always post that often. I kind of go in bursts when I have time, but I've released 2 videos this year, and that's because I was busy on tour and writing the book and all of that other stuff. But I think that there's there is an art to making the videos that will get recommended by YouTube's algorithm, which is unfortunately the reality of the thing. You have to, if you want your videos to get seen, it's got to be recommended. And that's a whole other podcast discussion, like what does the algorithm want? But at the end of the day, it is actually quite simple, which is that YouTube wants people to stay on their site and keep watching videos. So the way to get your stuff promoted is to make videos that people want to watch. So that's a very long process of like figuring out how to use the video editing software and what works and what doesn't. How do you edit it so that it flows and there's no dead time, but it's not overwhelming? That's something that takes years. But yeah, I think it's, if you just keep doing it and do a lot of it, then eventually it will start to work better. So this is something that I've spoken to Adam a lot about, is achieving quality through quantity. A lot of times we think about quality over quantity, but in fact, quantity is the way, in many cases, to quality. So if you just do it a lot, you'll get better at it.
Well, I know what you mean. Exactly. You learn as you go, and you're not going to learn if you do it sporadically. If you do
Right.
it enough, you start to figure it all out. Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, I got a couple more questions for you. Self-reflection time.
Sure.
Now, I'm interested to know how touring with Sungazer goes, like on a feeling kind of level. So, this, you just released a vlog about it. Like, did you just release it today? Because you just sent me
Yes.
the link. Okay.
It just went up today. Yep.
Okay, so, and I was watching it when it was time for you and I to get on the phone, so I'm going to go back and finish it. But
Sure.
basically, back around the end of May, you called me from Europe about the airlines
Yes.
losing your cymbals, and what I was really impressed by was how completely calm you were about the whole situation. In fact, you made me more calm at that moment. And the reason I was I was completely stressed, and it's ridiculous. But for anybody out there that's like a dad, or maybe one day will be a dad, you either understand or you're going to understand. So I'm not one of those crazy dads that lives vicariously through their kids. But like, my kid cares about playing this one particular travel sport. And she's really into it, and she strives to get better at it. And so it's my job to support her and help her get where she wants to be. So at the end of May, they have tryouts for these teams. And I mean, it's cutthroat. There's a lot of players that show up, and there's only maybe 22 that get asked to be on these teams. And they're full of good players, and you want your kid to be surrounded by other good players, just like you as a musician want to be around good musicians. You want to get that audition. You want to nail it. So I'm standing there pacing back and forth like a caged tiger, just like while these tryouts are going on. And I get this message from you, and I was like, something to do. And so
right. Fire to put out. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, I can manage this. This is a situation I can control. So I immediately got on the horn with you, and we talked it through. But what just made me laugh, even in that moment, there's a lot of detail about my life to talk about yours, but what I'm trying to say is, as I was pacing like a caged tiger, it was you that should have really been pacing like a caged tiger, because you were there to do a job, you didn't have your instruments, and you're making me more calm. And is that just you as you go through life, or are you, and also like the bands and partnerships musically that you're involved in, are they all just as zen as you are?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a question of nature versus nurture there. I am pretty chill just by nature. That's not to say that, things don't don't make me freak out like when my cymbals didn't arrive at the airport. But, I think I had like 16 hours or something of being on the phone before I talked to you that maybe helped me calm down before that. But I think that is something that's valuable as a musician, and probably, when you're doing just about anything in life, is being calm during a crisis and trying to solve it, rationally, because, if you're in a bad state of mind, your decisions won't be good. So I'm not sure. I mean, I probably cultivated that to an extent, but I think it's probably in large part just kind of who I am. But I also have like many years of going through really bad, like scary situations on stage where, especially when I was really young, where I made a huge mistake, or I remember like one time in middle school where our band director stopped the song and made us start over because, I don't know, the trumpets were rushing or something. So, I've been through a lot of that, like real stage fright. I've had some really horrifying things happen with technology, especially when I was like first learning how to use electronics. I told this story on Rick Beato's on a YouTube stream on his channel a couple years back, but I had the click track was going to the house because Ableton crashed between soundcheck and the show. So we had like the lines reversed. I've just had all kinds of horrifying things to work through on stage. And when you've been through something that bad, then nothing else seems like it can ever be, that uncomfortable. So it just, I think there's a zen that comes from dealing with those scary environments and being freaked out the first handful of times they happen. So I think I'm able to be more calm about it now than I was when I was younger.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Would you say that... Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, by the way, thank you so much for those cymbals. It was like kind of tricky to get them because of the timing of everything. It was last minute, but it was also a holiday in the UK. So yeah, you guys definitely saved our butts on that tour.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's, it's what we do. We got to work together. If you're in a pickle, then we've got to try and do our best to help you get out of that pickle. Just glad it worked.
Yeah, for sure. It was awesome.
Well, last question, and here's your chance for some extremely shameless self-promotion.
Right.
What's next for you?
What's next for me is going on the road with Sungazer. So we will be playing in many cities in the U.S. Let me think about the dates. So we start on September 8th in Nashville. By the way, if you want to come, let me know.
Actually, I'm writing that down right now.
Awesome. So we'll be in the States, in the Midwest and East Coast. Also Toronto, our first time in Canada. That'll be happening September and October. And then November, we're going back to Europe. And then at some point this fall, the book with Mike Mangini will come out. So I will definitely keep everybody posted on my, YouTube page and Instagram and all of that when that stuff is happening.
Shawn, dude, thank you so much for taking the time. 47 minutes and 22 seconds to be exact.
Nice.
And telling us all about yourself and what's gone on so far for you in your musical life. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It was fun chatting.
Thanks for listening to Meinl Radio. If you liked what you've heard, please remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Give us a rating as well on Apple Podcasts, if that's what you're listening to this on. Also, go to MeinlCymbals.com or go to MeinlStickandBrush.com or go to both of them and sign up for our email newsletters to keep up with everything that's going on in our Meinl world. Thanks. Take care.